I am now giving the floor to Mr. Arman Tatoyan, human rights defender of the Republic of Armenia, for his intervention. Mr. Tatoyan, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished representatives of civil society, OSCE participating states, and international partners, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor for me to be here today in Warsaw on the occasion of 2018 OSCE Human Dimension Implementation Meeting. Indeed, it is Europe's largest annual human rights and democracy conference that is organized by the Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights as a platform for state institutions, civil society, and other actors to discuss human rights problems and challenges, share their practices, and develop recommendations. Ladies and gentlemen, freedom of expression, freedom of peaceful assembly and association are fundamental values. They are the cornerstones of democracy upon which the very existence of a democratic society rests. Freedom of expression with its components is not only essential in its own right, but it also plays a central part in the fulfillment and enjoyment of a wide range of other human rights. It helps to create tolerant and diverse society where people with different views and intentions, including minority groups, can peacefully coexist. The society is not strong when it has limited access to information and media. It is also an indispensable ally in the fight against extremism. Access to the full diversity of opinions and sources of information contribute to a better informed society, help to address tensions, find solutions, and provide a framework of early warning when cohesion of society, democratic values, and fundamental freedoms are at stake. Access to the full It goes with no saying that strongly protected freedom of expression is a guarantee for freedom of peaceful assembly and association. These are closely interconnected values. This close link is especially crucial when authorities try to interfere with the right to freedom of peaceful assembly in reaction to views held or statements made by participants in a demonstration or members of an association. Therefore, national human rights institutions, civil society, and international organizations must join complementary mandates and forces to maximize the impact of their efforts to protect these values. Being independent bodies with a broad constitutional or legal mandate to protect and promote human rights, national human rights institutions assist individuals through complaints handling or legal assistance, monitor the human rights situation on the ground, advise government and parliament on compliance with international human rights norms, report to international human rights mechanisms, and promote a culture of rights through human rights education and awareness raising. Press freedom and freedom of expression, freedom of assembly and association are crucial values for national human rights institutions to fulfill their mission, as well as for the fulfillment and enjoyment of human rights in the country in general. Dear colleagues, let me now share with you some of my experience that relate to the topic of today's discussion. Serving as the human rights defender of Armenia since February 2016, I and my office have come across a number of nationwide developments that required maximum efforts from us, resources and capacities to protect freedom of expression, freedom of peaceful assembly and association in our country. Democratic processes that took place in April-May of this year were based on the values mentioned. These developments involved the whole nation and put us in the very center of all events. From the very first moments of the developments that started in early April of 2018, I established a specific task force with 10 working groups covering the whole country, provided specific tasks to each of these groups, and established an emergency schedule of activities. All of us had to work 24 hours a day, with night shifts, including non-working hours and non-working days. The established groups were in charge of monitoring demonstrations, media and social networks, conducting rapid visits to police stations, detention facilities and prisons, based on cases of arrests and detention of participants of demonstrations by the law enforcement agencies, as well as examination of individual complaints. Legal advice to applicants through the hotline and directly in the office. Within less than a month, only via hotline, about 500 calls on protesters' rights were received. About 100 visits within less than a month to police stations and detention facilities were conducted by my office and me personally. Private interviews were held with 974 persons detained and arrested during demonstrations. A specific direction of work was to protect journalistic activities. Thus, a separate monitoring was carried out during the demonstrations with regard to the protection of rights of journalists, sending necessary information on alleged violation to law enforcement bodies, to prosecutor's office for criminal investigation, and then monitoring this process. This experience showed that a very crucial element of effective work for the National Human Rights Institution is to have trust of all parties involved and to make sure that everyone perceives the institution and you personally as impartial and depoliticized. During the developments in Armenia, I was personally in touch with the leaders of movement, authorities, civil society actors, and international partners. This helped concentrate main information and be in the center of developments. We were also providing proper information to the public at large. During this whole period of assemblies and demonstrations, my task as a national human rights institution was to guide the human rights protection process, to provide advice and recommendations to all parties, ensuring maximum level of publicity and openness, by this serving an example for state authorities. My main purpose, of course, was to take maximum efforts to make sure that all the processes are peaceful and then there is no violence or threats to freedom of expression, no calls for violence, etc. Unfortunately, there were registered cases of hate speech and calls for violence, and that led to an atmosphere of intolerance in general. Fake profiles and rapidly opened groups with rapidly increasing followers in social media have become another challenge. Our monitoring showed that the main amount of hate speech and intolerance was generated by these profiles and groups, for instance, using cases of violence by the police, and the growing tendency could play a serious negative role by harming the peaceful process. However, it was possible to prevent these negative developments due to joint efforts of actors involved in the process, including the human rights defender of the country. I must specifically highlight the efforts of the leader of movement called My Step, the current Prime Minister of Armenia, and his team. Their constant calls on the public from demonstrations to keep the process peaceful and exclude provocations were very important. Open hands and no violence were their main slogans. And my close day and night contact with them was a unique possibility to share concerns on the matter and have necessary updates. And I must say that the leaders of the movement at that time played a crucial role in keeping the peaceful atmosphere in the country. Cooperation with the press also highly contributed to the peaceful process. Of course, all these activities would be useless without cooperation with civil society and international partners. I must here highlight specifically European Network of National Human Rights Institutions. This is ENNHRI, which provides a great platform for national human rights institutions for mutual and joint work. And of course, I highlight specifically the ODIHR, the Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, and especially the director and the professional team. Cooperation with them was another great possibility to guide the whole process and to effectively advocate for human rights. I thank you very much for your attention.